Alright, hello and welcome to Factoring When A is Not 1. This is going to be our lesson 2 of Unit 2. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so by the end of this lesson, I will be able to find the greatest common factor, or the GCF, in a polynomial. I will also be able to convert a quadratic equation in standard form to the factored form of a quadratic equation when A does not equal 1. So I'm looking at ax squared plus bx plus c. This is standard, and I want to convert it to x plus n times x plus m. This is my factored form. Alright, so the greatest common factor, or the GCF, is the largest term that all terms involved can be divided by. So remember, we talk about a term as something like this. 2x squared, that's one term. If I say plus 3x, let's actually change this. No, we're at plus 3x plus 4, that would be 1, 2, 3 different terms. So terms are separated by addition and subtraction. Alright, so here's our example. Find the greatest common factor of 3x squared and 12x. So I like to start with the numbers first. So I'm going to say, what's the biggest number that both 3 and 12 can both be divided by? Well, in that case, it's 3, right? 3 can be divided by 3, and 12 can be divided by 3. But that's the biggest number that can be divided out of both of them. Then I'm going to go to the first variable. Well, the first term is x squared, and the second one is x. So the largest number that can come out of x and x squared is just 1x. Then I would move to the next variable if I had one. In this case, I don't. So the greatest common factor of 3x squared and 12x is 3x, meaning that's the biggest number that I can divide out of both terms. Okay, let's do an example. Alright, so if I have 15xy squared z and 20y squared z squared, what would be the biggest number I could take out of both? Okay, so I'm going to start with 15 and 20. Well, let's see, I can take 5 out of both of those, right? So I'm going to say, well, 5. Is there anything bigger? So if I divide 15 by 5, that's 3. 20 by 5, that's 4. That one works. Next, I'm going to go to my x. Wait, I don't have an x in this equation right here, so I can't take an x out because both terms do not have an x. Next, I'm going to look at the y's. So I have a y squared and a y squared. Well, I can take both of those out. Those are both the same number. So I'm going to take out a y squared. And lastly, I have a z in this term and a z in this term. Well, or z squared in this term. So I can only take out one z because this equation right here only has 1. So my greatest common factor is 5y squared z. Hopefully that made sense. Alright, now we're going to factor when a equals 1, or when a does not equal 1. So remember, we get our standard equation here, ax squared plus bx plus c. We're going to start this exactly how we started factoring when a did equal 1. So we're going to identify the a, the b, and the c right here. My a value is this number in front of the x squared, my coefficient of the x squared term, which is 2. B is the coefficient of the x term, and c is my constant coefficient, which in this case is 10. Then we're going to fill out our table. It needs to be multiplied by whatever a times c is, which in this case is 20. So I multiply a times c, which is 2 times 10, get 20. Now I'm going to find all the things that multiply together to give me 20. I always start with 1. 1 times 20, then I say 2. 2 times 10, 3 doesn't go into 20, 4. So if you're struggling with finding these factors, start with that. Go 20 divided by 1, 1 times 20. 20 divided by 2 is 10, so 2 times 10. 20 divided by 4 is 5, so 4 times 5. And keep going down the list until you run out of your options, okay? Next, I'm going to say which pair adds together to be my term in the middle, which in this case is 9. So 1 plus 20 is 21. That does not work. 2 plus 10 is 12. That doesn't work. And 4 plus 5 is 9. That definitely works. So 4 and 5 are going to be our terms, and let's see what happens. Okay, so we are starting right here at our 2x squared plus 9x plus 10. We are going to expand this 9x out. So I'm going to use that 4 and that 5 that we got from that last from our chart to expand it out. So I have 2x squared plus 4x plus 5x plus 10. And so we've expanded this out. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of group it. It's called factoring by grouping. So I group my my terms. Next, I'm going to find my greatest common factor of each group. So we're going to look at this green group first. What is the greatest common factor of 2x squared plus 4x? Okay, start with the numbers. The biggest number I can divide out is a 2. That goes into 2 and 4. And I can only take one x out of each of these. So I take my 2x out. So 2x divided by 2x squared gives me an x. And 2x divided by 4x gives me just a 2. Now we do the same thing with the next group. What's the biggest, my greatest common factor of 5x plus 10, or the biggest thing that I can divide out? In this case, it's 5. Okay? So 5x divided by 5 leaves me with an x, and 5 divided by 10 gives me 2. Okay, so now I really have two terms here. I have 2x times x plus 2 and 5 times x plus 2. Okay, now what I can do is I'm going to find the greatest common factor again, because I really only have two terms here. The thing that both of these have in common is x plus 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that x plus 2 out, and it moves to right here, x plus 2. Then I divide out x plus 2 divided by what's up here. I'm only left with the 2x, and that's what comes down to this term right here. Do the same thing with the 5 times x plus 2. I divide out that x plus 2, and I'm left with a positive 5, and that comes right here. We have now factored with a not being equal to 1. So let's do an example, because that's a lot. Okay. So first off, I'm going to identify my A, my B, and my C. There's A, there's B. Make sure we include that negative for C. So A is 8, B is 6, and C is a negative 5. So multiplied to be whatever A times C is. So A times C is going to give me a negative 40. Okay, and I'm going to say what's all my things that multiply to give me 40. Well, we got 1 times 40, 2 times 20, 3 doesn't go into it, 4 goes into it, 4 times 10, and 5 times 8. Now I'm going to worry about this negative later, because I know that one of the numbers in each pair has to be positive and one number has to be negative for my resulting answer to be a negative 40. Well, I know that it has to add up to be a 6. So if I have 1 and 40, 2 and 20, oh, no 3 there. 4 and 10, and 5 and 8. I need one side to be positive and one side to be negative. Well, if my B is positive, I know that my bigger number has to be positive, which would make my smaller numbers negative. So negative 1 plus 40 gives me 39. That one doesn't work. Negative 2 plus 20 gives me 18. That doesn't work. So look, we're trying to find stuff that's 6. Negative 4 and 10 is 6. Ding, ding, ding. Negative 5 and 8 is 3. That doesn't work. Okay. So now I can rewrite this. That's the next step. So I'm going to say 8x, but instead of writing, or 8x squared, but instead of writing 6x, I'm going to use my terms, my factors that I found in there. So I'm going to get rid of this plus. Because we're going to say negative 4x plus 10x minus 5. So we took this negative 4 and 10 from over here from my factors that we found. Negative 4x plus 10x is 6x, so we're solid. Okay, next I'm going to group these. I'm going to find the greatest common factor of each group. So in my first group, 8x squared minus 4x, I know that I can take a 4 out for my numbers and 1 x out. So 8x squared divided by 4x, so 8 divided by 4 is 2, and x squared divided by x is just an x. Next, I can say, well, negative 4x divided by 4x just gives me a negative 1. Plus, my greatest common factor of this second grouping would be a 5. So 10x divided by 5 is 2x. Negative 5 divided by 5 gives me a negative 1. And really what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for those to be the same. I want them to be the same because that means I can do this next step. I can find the greatest common factor of each of those two terms, which in this case is that 2x minus 1. Now, when I find what's left over, I divide 2x minus 1 out of this first term. I'm left with 4x. Divide 2x minus 1 by the second term. I'm left with a plus 5. And we have now factored. If you have any questions about if you did this right, you should be able to distribute, which using the FOIL method, to see if you can get back to your original equation. All right. So I would like you to try this next one. Pause the video, see if you can figure out how to factor 2x squared plus 22x plus 60. All right. So hopefully you paused it, hopefully you tried it. Let's figure out how we would do this. First, we're identifying our A, B, and C. A is 2, B is 22, and C is 60. Okay, so 2 times 60 is 120. So I'm going to start with 1. 1 times 120. 2 times 60. 3 times 40. 4 times 30. 5 times, I believe it's 24. And 120, let's see, does 6 go into it? Yep, 6 times 20. 7 doesn't, but I'm pretty sure 8 does. 8 times 15. 9 doesn't, but 10 and 12 do. Okay, but it needs to add to be 22x. Or not 22x, just 22. Okay, everything's going to be positive, so I can cancel out a lot of these already. These are all super big numbers. 5 and 24 is 29, 26. Let's see, 8 plus 15 equals 23. Oh, no check mark, x. So that one doesn't work. 10 times 12 equals 10 plus 12, sorry, it's 22. That's the one I want. Okay, so now I can rewrite this. I can say 2x squared plus 22. Oh, we're not going to write 22x. We want to put our new things, 10x plus 12x plus 60. Okay, next we're going to group these. And it doesn't matter which one we pick. If we decide to put 10x first or 12x first, these two terms right here can flip-flop. It's not a big deal. Okay, common factor of 2x squared and 10x is 2x. When I divide that out, 2x squared divided by 2x is just an x. 10x divided by 2x is a 5. And next, I'm going to find the greatest common factor of 12x plus 60. Well, a 12 can go into both of those. So 12x divided by 12 is just x. 60 divided by 12 would give me 5, which is good. That's what I want. I want these to be the same. So when I now factor out x plus 5, because that's my greatest common factor, I'm left with a 2x and a positive 12. So my answer is x plus 5 times 2x plus 12. Alright, if you have any questions about this or struggle with this is a new concept. I expect you to struggle a little bit. Please come and talk to me, work with a tutor. We'd be happy to help. Thank you, and we'll see you next lesson.